This video didn't start out as a video about Andertons, not even close, but it's become one. It's a question of ethics, disclosures, and whether or not you can trust videos produced by them. But this video started out with a question that I initially thought was completely unrelated. Who is behind Victory amplification? Victory have become a well-known amp brand in a relatively short amount of time. In fact, I would say that they're probably the fastest growing amp brand I've ever seen. And with that, I had the question, who is behind it? And rather unusually, that was a very difficult question to find the answer to. I wasn't the only one who asked, nor the first person who asked. There's forum posts and theories about who might be behind it, but no concrete answers. Victory say who designs the amps, but that's not the answer to the question of who's behind the company. There's always someone behind any product in any industry, and in the guitar industry it's relatively easy to find out who. And I think that's a good thing, because more transparency in this industry is always a good thing. But with Victory, it was very difficult, and that only made me want to dig a little deeper. Victory are a UK-based brand, and normally when I'm looking for a UK-based company, I'll look at Companies House, the publicly listed accounts of all the companies in the country. And normally, you get what you're looking for. For example, if you were looking for who owns Blackstar, there it is. But when searching for Victory, I couldn't find anything. I found a Victory Group AMP, but that was for property development and real estate, not what we're looking for. So that does complicate things for us a bit, because just because a brand is called a certain thing doesn't mean the company that owns said brand is called that. They could sell amps and they could be called Cat Food Limited. It doesn't actually need to be referred to it, and that would make things difficult. Not impossible, but difficult to find. So the next step I took was to start looking at some of those theories. And one that stood out to me was that Lee Anderton had some involvement with the company. The theories were based around little evidence other than Andertons featured Victory amps a lot on the YouTube channel. But then again, they feature a lot of amps on the YouTube channel. But it was a starting point anyway to have a look at. I looked up Lee Anderton on Companies House and noted the companies that he was part of, some that were active and some that were not active, and we saw what we would expect to see. For example, Chapman Guitars or Burns Guitars, two companies that he's publicly a part of and has mentioned that he's a part of. The only company that stood out to me that could potentially have something to do with Victory was a company called Gap Distributions. I'd never heard of that before, so that could be it. But how could we tell? Trademarks. Trademarks are also publicly listed in the UK, and you can search them, you can find out who owns them. You can do this by keywords or companies, so I searched it up and I found Trademarks belonging to Gap Distribution. East Coast Guitars. That would make sense. While Andertons have many a video talking about how great those guitars are.
We keep saying this in the East Coast videos, it's our favourite kind of affordable guitar brand.
There are two videos that I could find that somewhat mention it being a house brand.
Find something to sell, whether it's own brand or not own brand or whatever. East Coast delivered the sort of guitars and the basses. These, obviously, as you know, is a kind of like a little own brand type thing that we work with.
We'll return to this point later, but another trademark I found was for Landlord Effects.
Yes, this is a new brand, Landlord Effects.
Well, they're a little bit more than just a new brand, aren't they? They're your new brand. Makes sense why they're your favourite cheap pedals though. Worth noting that Landlord Effects was never disclosed as having anything to do with Andertons or Lee Anderton himself. There was no disclosure at all. It was just viewed as a new brand that they were stocking. Some people were even trying to figure out who was behind it. But I still didn't find what I was looking for, the answer to my initial question, who's behind Victory? Who owns Victory? So I continued on, and I found this interview with Martin Kidd, the Victory amp designer, on the Tone Talk podcast.
Now, does Andertons have anything to do with the Victory?
No, it's quite a common question. Now, Lee, I've known Lee since my Cornford days, and he particularly liked. He used to do quite well with the MK50 Mark II. And so his involvement, if you can call it that, is that I will very often, almost always, pick his brains in terms of when I've got a new design, what do you think? Will it sell? And so, and I'll just sort of get him to, I suppose, advise.
His involvement, if you could even call it that. That didn't sound like ownership to me. So with no links on Company's house, that trail went cold. The Martin Kidd interview did shed some light in other areas though.
A group of people that thought it was a shame that Cornford had disappeared, but believed that I would be able to design, or should continue doing so as well. Amps sort of got behind it. None of them were, none of them are loaded in terms of none of them are particularly rich guys, but they just thought, well, I'm prepared to offer X amount to get you started. And so that's really how it all started again, as Victory.
The Straight Edge, basically, were they involved? Or
well, I work for
Straight Edge, right?
For Straight Edge, yes. So
Yes.
I'm the designer at Full Victory, but I work for Straight Edge, and so they do make the Victory amps.
Yeah.
Okay, we're getting somewhere. There's a group of people and Martin works for Straight Edge. Straight Edge Manufacturing manufacture pedals and amplifiers in the UK. They are one of the very few factories, if not the only factory, I suppose you could say. Maybe they're the owners of Victory. Maybe they're the group of people behind it. It would make sense. Martin Kidd works for Straight Edge and he's the Victory amps designer. I guess that's case closed. Or so I thought. Weeks passed and I was just thinking about it. I wasn't 100% satisfied. I didn't have confirmation. It was, again, just a theory. So I had a brainwave. I can't believe I hadn't thought about it sooner. A trademark search. Victory are bound to have trademarks, be it for a logo, a name, something. I could search that and see who owns the trademarks, see the address of the... I could find it. I simply searched a trademark for Victory and I found it. A trademark for a logo registered to a Stuart Wright in Woking. That's not the answer I was quite expecting. Woking is a fair distance away from where Straight Edge is, and there's no Stuart Wright listed on the Straight Edge company. Is this the elusive owner I was looking for? I searched for more trademarks and I found more registered for Victory, all the different amp names. They were all registered to the same guy, to the same address. And then it hit me. I recognised that address. I had seen it when I was looking at the companies that Lee Anderton owned. He had a number of companies registered to the same address. Now this is common practice when working with an accountant. And who is Stuart Wright? He's a chartered accountant and a partner of the firm that Andertons and Lee Anderton uses. But perhaps this is just a coincidence. It's entirely possible that this is just two different entities using the same accountant. That happens all the time. It could be nothing more than that. But it's definitely worth looking into. Coincidences. 1 or 2 are likely just that. But 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, then it starts to become a pattern. And we're looking for a pattern. We know that Lee Anderton is a co-owner of Chapman Guitars, so if there are some crossovers between the companies, that's something that we should note. So I started looking. When Victory first came onto the scene, they started with a signature amplifier for Rob Chapman. Now this, on its own, wouldn't be a crazy idea. At the time, Rob was arguably the biggest YouTube guitar player ever, and he had already had endorsements with Marshall and Orange. No matter what the company, this was probably a pretty good business move at the time. But in the development of this signature model, before the brand even had a name, before it was even called Victory, Rob put up a video looking at his prototype signature amplifier. It was him, Martin Kidd, and a mystery cameraman.
The amazing Martin Kidd. Woo! Come on! Woo!
I don't know about you, but to me, that cameraman sounds awfully familiar. Could just be a coincidence though. So here's another. To date, Victory have had 5 signature artists, 3 of which were not only on-screen talent for Andertons, but signature artists for Chapman Guitars. Coincidence? Maybe. But here's another. Victory and Chapman shared NAMM booths for a couple of years at NAMM. Now, this again, on its own, a solitary incident, wouldn't be that big of a deal. It's common enough to have amplifier companies and guitar companies collaborate on NAMM booths because booths are expensive and you need guitars to test amps and you need amps to test guitars. So generally that cohesion works very well and companies collaborate. But it's just another thing to add on the list of coincidences. And I've still got more. For endorsements, both Chapman and Victory utilize a service from Fairbanks Endorsements. Now, Fairbanks Endorsements work with a number of different companies, but seemingly only Chapman and Victory as the full-time thing. Chapman and Victory also share the same website builder. Just another coincidence. And then there's this. It's a blog post about Snake Oil Fine Instruments. You might recall that that was the shoot-off pedal brand from Chapman Guitars, again co-owned by Lee Anderton. And in this blog it talks about the design process, and it mentions Lee briefed us on what they hope to achieve, and put us in touch with their go-to product development genius, Simon Clark, from Straight Edge Manufacturing. Now, being built by Straight Edge isn't all that unexpected. As I mentioned, they are one of the very few, and very likely the biggest manufacturer in the field, especially in the UK. But what stood out to me was the way the blog was worded, and it begs the question, how can you have a go-to guy if you've never gone to the guy before? And then in 2021, Rob Chapman officially announced in a video that he was leaving Victory as a signature artist. And in the comments of that video, there were several theories and accusations, but it's this comment that stood out to me.
Stop it, Rob. You didn't leave, you were let go.
Not at all, man. The owner and I are best friends. Couple of things to take away from that. He does publicly refer to Lee Anderton as his best mate, and the owner implies very strongly one guy. So, with everything I've collected so far, I think it's time to ask the question. By the way, obviously videos like this take a long time to piece together, so if you're enjoying it so far, leave a like on the video and consider subscribing, because who else is doing this stuff? I sent Lee a message on Instagram containing the most compelling evidence I had and asking one question. To what level was his involvement with Victory Amplification? And to his credit, he responded. Thanks for getting in touch. Victory Amps is a traditional partnership registered in the UK with several partners from both within and outside of the music industry. The partnership details are not in the public domain, so that's why it's not possible to see who's involved. There are quite a few partners, 9 in total, and I'm one of them. Not everyone wants their business details in the public domain, so I can't share who the others are, but you can probably guess at least one of them. He designs the amps. I'm not a majority shareholder, and I've never been employed by Victory in any official capacity. I was just happy to help it get off the ground with a few others and put up a little bit of seed capital, and I enjoy chatting to Martin about ideas we both have for new amps. I've known Martin Kidd for 20 plus years and was a fan of his amps long before Victory was conceived. I have on many occasions given him and his colleagues advice and recommendations with regards to boring things like accountancy and bank accounts, hence why we all use the same accountants, as well as more interesting things like product design and marketing ideas. I've been around a long time in the industry and I've offered similar advice to many people over the years. It's always fun to spend time with Martin and discuss ideas for new products. He's got an uncanny ability to understand the kind of non-technical things that guitar players say and translate those words into technical designs that make great sounding amps. So that confirms it then. Those theories were right. Lee Anderton is one of 9 people behind Victory Amplification. Now, before we go any further, I want to make one thing crystal clear. I have no issue with Lee owning as many companies as he wants. He can co-own them, he can fully own them, as many different pedal, guitar, amp, whatever he wants, more power to him. Where I do have an issue is if that ownership is kept a secret, whether intentionally or not. I had just one more question for Lee after he confirmed his involvement with Victory Amplification. This is what I said. Hi Lee. First, I wanted to thank you for being honest with me and answering my question. I do appreciate it. I just have one follow-up question. You see, I've been trying to figure out who owned Victory for some time now. Victory became a major amp brand in a relatively quick time, and it was quite unusual for it to be so hard to find out who was behind it. I asked around and no one knew. There were theories and rumours, but nothing of any substance. So I commenced work on making a video trying to get to the bottom of it. I noticed with other companies, where it's public domain that you have levels of ownership, Chapman, Burns is a good comparison because it's with a consortium of others. You're very open about your level of ownership. You talk about it. You say we and us when referring to the companies. That's cool.
Burns Guitars. Right. I should full declaration here. In 2020, I got the opportunity to be part of a small consortium of guitar enthusiasts and was offered the chance to buy the Burns guitar company. As you may or may not know, I kind of got involved with a consortium of people that bought the band's brand
How's that
3
going?
years ago. What we decided to do, because it was taking so long to try and get us to where we wanted to be, and
With our friend Rob Shapman at the helm. And myself following closely up the rear. But we thought we'd do a hybrid-y kind of thing. And then we've used Seymour Duncan.
But with Victory, you talk about the guys at Victory. They, or our friends over at Victory. There's even instances of you thanking the guys at Victory for sending you a t-shirt. It gives the impression that you are not part of the group that owns Victory. To further illustrate my point, I'm now going to play a 1-minute compilation, and I'm capping it at 1 minute. Believe me, I could let it play for longer. We're doing 1 minute of Lee talking about Victory, the guys at Victory, they or them. Nothing even remotely close to indicating that he is a co-owner of Victory.
If you're familiar with the guys at Victory, they make guitar amplifiers from the chaps and chapesses at in sunny England at the Victory place.
range of amplifiers from our friends at Victory.
And I really think they've nailed this.
I think in fairness to Martin Kidd and the chaps at Victory, Victory updated their old Sheriff range.
Those kind people at Victory said, fine, cabinet from the people at Victory. An attempt by the guys at Victory. People at Victory, would you do a little cabinet? And they listened.
Yes.
They listened.
So they've been trying to sort of come up with this,
The wonderful people at Victory, who at least are British.
by the wonderful people at Victory Amplification, and their new monstrous V4.
When they did the Sheriff, they did 2 versions of the Sheriff. They did the compact one in the metal box, and then they did a slightly louder one in a wooden box.
Honestly and truthfully, I love Victory amplifiers, and I'm leaning towards them, but purely and simply because they've only been around for a year.
I searched through close to 10 years of Victory videos from Andertons to try and find any instance where it is mentioned or even hinted that there is a level of ownership or partnership, but I could find nothing. So my question is, has your level of ownership intentionally been kept a secret? And if so, why? Now Lee responded to this question, and before we get into it, I want to talk a little bit about why this information, this level of ownership being hidden or kept a secret, is a bad thing. Now look, anyone with their head screwed on is going to take a video from Andertons, the biggest music store YouTube channel, and view it with some level of critical thinking. It's a music shop, and their goal, or end goal, is to sell you something. They're not going to be too critical of the products that they stock. That's to be expected. But what is also expected is a level of equality among the products. If a store is selling 3 different amplifiers that are in the same price range, a Marshall, an Orange and a Victory, there's no incentive to sell one over the other because the cut that they're getting, their dealer cut, is going to be roughly the same per amplifier. There's no incentive to sell one brand over the other. But there absolutely is an incentive to sell one brand over the other if you co-own one of them. And with Andertons being a YouTube channel, the biggest music store YouTube channel, amassing over 330 million views, a lot of the viewers will have come from the US. At least that's my experience. About half of the viewers are US based, and with other YouTubers I've talked to, it's kind of roughly the same. There's a lot of guitar players based in the US. And Andertons are a UK based store, meaning that when they make a video about amplifiers, and some US viewers watch, they should go into it thinking that no matter what those US viewers decide to buy based off that video, it's not going to affect their bottom line, because they're not going to sell it to them, because amplifiers are heavy, hard to ship, there's taxes on import, they're set to a different outlet voltage. A US customer is not really going to buy a tube amp from Andertons. They're going to buy it somewhat locally. In other words, Andertons, and in turn Lee Anderton, doesn't stand to gain anything if a US viewer decides to purchase an amplifier based off one of the videos that they make. But what if that wasn't the case? What if Lee Anderton stood to gain more if you bought a specific amp brand, and in our US example, he only stood to gain if you bought a specific amp brand that he was showcasing? Wouldn't that call into question everything? I think at the bare minimum it would call into question the comparison videos with amplifiers.
For sound and particularly the gain, you know, that first sound that we got where you just had a little bit of gain coming out of it, I'm afraid V40 Deluxe would
I'm sold on.
Now, I'm not saying it's impossible for that to genuinely be his favourite amp. There's a 1 in 3 chance that it is in that particular case. But I think it would also be very naive to not factor in that at least at a subconscious level, there's going to be bias. And I would point out that nobody has the opportunity to factor that in because nobody knew that he was a co-owner of this amp brand. And when it comes to the point about subconscious bias, I think Lee would probably agree with me, because he said this when he was talking about blindfolded videos.
I just read through my own experience of going like, oh my God, like if I can see what the products are, I'm totally drawn to certain brands and certain products, and not just visually, like hourly as well, you know, as in I'm genuinely thinking that certain things sound better than other things. And then when I blindfold myself, I'm genuinely not coming to the same conclusions.
This is about trust. And again, I think Lee would agree.
You know, we've got integrity, I think, which maybe you know, it's quite difficult to get. You know, YouTube is full of people that are being paid to say nice things about products. And it's hard to know what's believable and what's not.
While Andertons don't accept payment to make videos for brands, I still think the same argument can be made against at least the videos containing the brands that Lee co-owns. To be clear, I wouldn't even have an issue with that if it was disclosed. But I've gone through near 10 years of videos about Victory amplifiers from Andertons, and there has been no mention whatsoever. Zero. Nothing. And it's also very much worth mentioning that if Lee Anderton was a private person, there would be no issue here. He could keep his business dealings private and no one would need to know. But he's not a private person. He's an influencer. He's an owner and host of the biggest music store channel on YouTube, 330 million plus views. By definition, he is an influencer. And by not disclosing his involvement, his ownership of these different brands, he's in breach of UK advertising standards. So, to my question that I asked him, has your involvement with Victory been intentionally kept a secret? And if so, why? Here's what he said. I suppose because I'm not employed by Victory and have no formal role there, I've always seen it as a separate business. My role in Andertons, Chapman and Burns is more official. I'm a director of both Burns and Chapman and the managing partner at Andertons, and I have more day-to-day influence over how they're run. I think I've always been quite open about being involved in some product testing at Victory. That is true. Credit where credit is due. He has been transparent about that. But again, listen to the way it's worded. His reasoning for his involvement with the testing of Victory is that Andertons were the first dealer and that he's friends with Martin Kidd. Not that he's a co-owner.
You guys know that Andertons is the sort of first Victory dealer in the world, and I'm good friends with Martin Kidd. He said, why don't you come up to Victory one day and we'll get 4 V10s in a row.
And this is the only other instance I could find of them talking about testing at Victory.
Where the guys at Victory invited me up to do some speaker testing in their V10 combo. Martin Kidd was there and a few of the other guys from Victory were there.
The guys at Victory strike again. I see Martin Kidd maybe 3 or 4 times a year, and we do talk about products he's working on, and I do give him suggestions for things I believe will be popular. I think I've been to the factory maybe twice in the last 4 years. While this is information that does stand to how he's not involved in the day-to-day running of Victory, it's also somewhat missing the point. I'm not really talking about how often he visits the factory, it's more how often the Victory dividends check visits his bank account. A landlord doesn't have to visit the properties he owns to collect the rent every month, and an investor doesn't have to visit the factories of companies that he works with to collect the profits. To your specific point, has my involvement been a secret in Victory? Then that's for the people to decide themselves. That's not the best way to answer a yes or no question. You asked me, and I told you. I don't think anyone else has specifically asked before. I would argue that that's probably because it's been such a well-kept secret. I was weighing up whether or not to have such a long section of this video showcasing how I got to the point of asking the question. There was a lot of what you could only refer to as an investigation. And if you have to be Sherlock Holmes to get to the point of asking the question, that's probably why no one has directly asked. I think maybe once someone posted, "Does Andertons own Victory?" and I replied, "No." Perhaps I could have gone into more detail, but Andertons doesn't own Victory. Yeah, there is a big difference between does Andertons own Victory? No, and does Andertons own Victory? No, I do. A very big difference. And the lines are already blurred, because remember we were talking about East Coast guitars. That's owned or co-owned by Lee Anderton. Andertons doesn't own it, doesn't have anything to do with it other than stocking it. But the only time that any of this is even remotely close to being disclosed is when East Coast are described as
kind of like a little own brand type thing that we work with.
Andertons doesn't own that, Lee does. But that one's described as an own brand type thing. It's confusing. I want people to perceive Victory for what it is, and not allow their opinions of me, positive or negative, to affect their opinions of Victory. Does that answer your question? If not, I'll keep checking into Insta messages while I'm away and try and reply. On reflection, I've just realised that Lee not only answered the question, he answered both parts of it. If we recall, the original question was, has your involvement in Victory intentionally been kept a secret, and if so, why? And this bit answers the if so, why part. As you can probably tell, I'd much rather people watched and read articles about the amps themselves than about who owns what, but I'll leave it up to you to decide whether or not this is interesting enough to publish. I'd rather you spend time doing an amp review. Smiley face. I would guess that most brand owners would prefer me to review and promote their products rather than point out when they're breaching advertising standards. I would guess that would be a pretty common sentiment. But I absolutely do believe that it's an important thing to talk about. And if it's for the people to decide, then the people have to know about it. Lee was very open and willing to answer my questions, and for that, I have respect. Not once did he try and lie. In many of these situations, people try and lie, and it's very easy to catch them out. Lee did not lie, and for that, he has my respect. However, when it comes to omissions, it's a completely different story. Because I urge you to look back at the video and just note how many times there's half-truths. There's the truth, but there's an omission. There's information held back. There's a lot of instances of that happening. The fact is that he's managed to go close to a decade without ever mentioning that he's one of 9 people who own Victory Amplification. And it's not as if he just forgot, because I've gone through all the videos and I found instances of his co-hosts feeling the need to disclose their relationship with Victory, which in both cases was nothing close to being one of the owners.
Victory V40 Deluxe.
Yeah, I have to declare an interest here, given that I did the video for Victory, helped do the Victory for the V40 Deluxe, so I'm well aware of that amplifier.
Talking of bias, I mean, I'm biased.
Of course you are.
Because I'm a Victory amps artist. And
there's a little red amp on the top here.
That's one of mine. I've got another one too. And I really like the company, so I probably shouldn't say anything through the entire video.
Just play. I mean,
Lee just sat back and watched them disclose and never disclosed anything himself. And I'm not as strict as the UK Advertising Standards Authority. They'd want him to disclose every single video that he had ownership of Victory. I'd be happy with once every 10 years. But even that hasn't happened. And again, I'd like to stress, owning brands, no issue whatsoever. And disclosing those brands, that's all you need to do. We all know that he's co-owner of Chapman, no one has any issues with it. We all know that he's a co-owner of Burns, he says it. No issues whatsoever. It's when it's kept a secret. When you have to go full Sherlock Holmes to get even close to trying to figure out who's behind it, that's a problem. The UK advertising standards require disclosures, but forget about that. If you want to describe Andertons as,
we've got integrity, I think.
Then disclosures of external interests that absolutely will have some level of bias need to happen. It's what's required for the customers, for the potential customers, the viewers, because then, and only then, can there be a level of trust. So I'm going to cap this off with just a thought that's going around in my head. How many other brands is Lee Anderton invested in? We now know of 5. When this video started, you probably knew of 2 or 3. Thanks for watching, subscribe if you want, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye!